Part of the anti-Semitism outbreak in Hungary is due to a very successful fascist anti-Semitic political party called Jabok. That's the name of the party. It's pronounced it's written Jabok, it's pronounced Jabok. And the leader of that party is a young Hungarian man. His name is Csanád Szegedy. Csanád Szegedy. Tall, powerful, brilliant communicator, handsome, wise, clever, great oratory skills, and a lot of charisma. And he became one of the leaders of this party, a very young man, and he really made it extremely popular and successful. He also founded a paramilitary group fashioned based on the Nazi type of marches during the Second World War. And he and his party preach open anti-Semitism. They blame the Jews on most of the problems in the world. And of course, all the problems in Hungary is the fault of the Jews and the Gypsies, if that makes you feel better. It's the Jews and the Gypsies. His party and his mouth spewed Jew hatred, anti-Semitism, horrible things about Israel and the Jewish people, and dark illusions and horrible humor about Jewish power and the Jewish obsession to take over the world. This was Csanád Szegedy. He was the star of the party and a rising star in Hungary. The party managed to get 3 seats in the parliament, and he was one of the members of the Hungarian parliament. And this continued until one day he made a discovery, and it changed his life forever. It was a cozy afternoon in April 2012. He went to visit his 92-year-old grandmother, who lived in a suburb in Hungary. And he was schmoozing with his grandmother, and out of the blue, she rolled up her sleeve, and she pointed to a number tattooed on her arm. And she looked at him and she said, "Let me tell you my story. In 1945, I was a young Hungarian woman. I was liberated from the hell of Auschwitz. My mother died when I was a baby. My aunt and uncle adopted me. They were taken to Auschwitz. They were murdered. Our entire family was murdered, together with almost 1 million Hungarian Jews who were murdered in 1944. I survived the gas chambers, and I emerged from Auschwitz after the liberation in 1945, starved, emaciated. I looked like a skeleton. I was beaten. I was crushed. I had nobody in the world. My trauma convinced me that to be Jewish was a serious liability. If the Holocaust would happen again, the Jews would be targeted. I married a Jewish survivor in a perfectly Orthodox wedding, a Jewish religious halachic wedding. He was also in Auschwitz. Shortly after the wedding, we decided together, why do we have to impose this liability on our children? We will hide our Jewishness forever. We will never tell our children that they belong to the Jewish people. We changed our last names to a perfect Hungarian, non-Jewish sounding name, and we committed that we would never reveal the secret to anybody that we are Jewish. Nobody knew us. We were alone in the world. All of our relatives were murdered by the Germans. This wasn't difficult. We started a new life. We had a daughter. Her name is Katalin. And our greatest nachas was when she came home with a perfectly handsome, good-looking Hungarian shegitz. And she married him, and we looked at each other and we said, success. She married a regular Hungarian non-Jew, and in 1982, when you, Csanád, were born to a Hungarian father and our daughter Katalin, this for us meant that we could look away from our horrific dark past as a new chapter in our life ultimately took root. We were regular Hungarian non-Jews. She looked at her grandson and she said, "So I want you to know that I'm Jewish. Your mother is Jewish, and therefore you're also Jewish." Now understand, this wasn't just a challenge to his career to his accomplishments, to his vocation, to his future. This was a shock to his very sense of self. He was the anti-Semite. He was the Jew hater. He was the one who explained to the world how horrible the Jews are, and he is the Jew. He is the Jew. And he looked at his grandmother and he says, why did we never see this number? She said, in the winter I always made sure that to wear sleeves, and in the summer I would put plaster on it. She didn't want to stand out. I would put plaster on the numbers so nobody would be able to identify it. And now suddenly, his anti-Semitism, his racism, his fascism, which is who he was or who he thought he was now all delegitimized by this moment. He made a call to his best friend, and he told him what he just heard. And what did his best friend tell him? What would you tell your friend? His best friend said, the best thing that can happen to you right now is I take a gun and I shoot your brains out. It's literally the biggest favor I can do for you at this moment in your life. 32-year-old man. Because what are you supposed to do now? You know what he did? Shana Jagedi did two things. Two things. Number one, he went immediately to the party leaders and he broke the news to them that he's Jewish, and he gave in his resignation. They didn't want to accept his resignation. They said, it's good to have you because it's called the Pope Jews. We'll have token Jews so we could say we're not anti-Semitic. We even have a Jew. It's a great cover-up. He said, no way. I'm done with you. I'm Jewish. You know what else he did? He called up the Chabad Shliach in Budapest, Rabbi Shlomo Kovesh, who himself is a Baal Tshuva from Budapest. And he gets on the phone. Rabbi Kovesh answers the phone. He says, hi, this is Shana Jagedi. He's like, what? He says, I'm a Jew and I want to become Jewish. So imagine I would get a call from, I don't know, Malcolm X. I would get a call from Lou Sharpton. I don't know. Say, Rabbi Jacobson, I'm Jewish. Can I come to your shir and look at the Torah and Masechta Rosh Hashanah? So we're sure going to go to a psychiatrist. So Shlomo Kovesh, it's like a neo-Nazi, a fascist, calling up a Chabad Shliach that he's Jewish. He wants to learn Judaism. So he thought he's making a joke because that's what anti-Semites do. They like joking, they like mocking. So he hung up on him. He insisted, he called and he said, I am not making jokes. I am Jewish. And finally he realized that this is real. He says, I want to meet you. And he meets him and he sees this is the man. And he tells him the story. He says, what am I supposed to do? So he looks him in the eyes and he says, listen, Judaism believes in tshuva. Judaism believes in return and repentance. You can transform your life. Now it's time to study, to discover your roots, and to create a new future for yourself. But one more thing. Real tshuva means not running away from the past, but transforming the past. So your tshuva is going to be when you will seize the opportunity and use all of your influence to fight anti-Semitism in Hungary. Everything you know about anti-Semitism and everything you did, you need to transform by using your position, your influence, your sphere of influence and impact to change that. This man at the age of 32 had a bris. He had a circumcision. He began learning Torah every single day with Rabbi Shlomo Kovesh. Put on a talis cotton. He comes today 3 times a day to his shul to daven Shachris Mincha Maidev. The first few weeks when the Jews came into the shul and they saw who's standing there, they threw him out of shul. But after a few weeks, they calmed down and they accepted him. 1 year after this discovery, his grandmother dies. She's 93 years old and he decides it's time to go to Auschwitz. He goes to Auschwitz and he described it in an interview. He said, I was standing at the crematorium and suddenly he says, I quote, I burst out crying, I break down. I thought I'm standing by the graveside of my family, the people I never knew. I always claimed that the Holocaust was not bad. The Jews made a big story, they dramatized it. And here I was standing at the graveside of all of my ancestors who were murdered here. I want people to understand Jews. Anti-Semites don't understand who Jews are. They know nothing about Jews. Certainly he would know. He was one of them. His wife is now converting to Yiddishkeit according to halacha. All of his sons had a bris, they were circumcised. And he embarked on a mission to talk to schools, groups, colleges, anyone who will hear his story about the toxicity of anti-Semitism. He tells them why at the age of 17, feeling empty, pussed and empty, he needed something to believe in, and Jews were a great scapegoat. And this is what he talks about, that you will not create a good life for yourself by hating others. They asked him, what does your father feel about this? Remember, his father is the real non-Jew. He says, my father thinks I'm crazy. My father looked at me and said, why in the world would you want to be Jewish? Why in the world? Who needs this? And I told my father, it's not about what I want. It's about who I am. Besides, it's not a curse. It's a gift. He says, then I had to tell my father that I had a bris, I had a circumcision. I knew if I tell it to him regularly, he would literally kill me. So what did I do? Once we were on an airplane, and as we were landing, our seatbelts were fastened. I turned to him and I said, Daddy, I had a circumcision. I hope that for the next few minutes, by the time the plane lands, he would calm down. And right then, he was in a seatbelt. The plane was landing. He wouldn't be able to beat the living daylights out of me. And I actually just read a few weeks ago, somebody sent to me that he's planning now to move to the Holy Land. Here you have an example of what Emunah Pshuta is. This did not come from a life of a person who was entrenched in Shas and Poskim, in Rishonim and Achronim, in Mesorah and Chazal, in Torah and Mitzvahs. Not only that, he dedicated his life to fight it. But you can't change the color of your soul. Your soul is essentially one with God, and therefore it experiences it. This is never afraid of intellect. It transcends it. Have a wonderful week. We'll see you next Thursday.